Right.
I'm going to fight to expand and fund national service programs. That's what I'm going to do because they have been so critical for East Tennessee and they are such an important program that, even my opponent likes. And he lamented privately when AmeriCorps was cut and did nothing about it publicly. And that was another thing for me when I'm like, we don't just get to be upset about things. We have to do things even when there is a personal and political cost. And for me, what I'm going to carry is the importance of this program and how we're going to fund it, because I think money that goes into AmeriCorps yields huge benefits for the communities that it's invested in. The question, the grounding, the three people that took my role after me at UT Recycling as an AmeriCorps VISTA, one of them I ended up hiring for Knoxville, and now that person works part-time with me on my campaign. Another one helped me with Knoxville deliveries in the county, the neighboring county that she works at a nonprofit. She would take our customer deliveries once a week there. The other person, we touched base recently. And I think the really cool thing is if someone's in AmeriCorps, it's kind of a proxy for this is good, hardworking people.
When you decided that the systems were the problem and the policies were impacting the systems, where did that feeling inside of you? How are you so brave?
I'll just say that I really believe that I'm on this planet to serve. And there's a lot of sacrifices that I have made and will continue to make, and there are high personal costs. But I feel a very deep sense of calling to serve my community, and I really can't imagine spending my time any other way right now. And same thing with running for office, where my district has been red since the Civil War, or since Reconstruction, essentially.
Whoa.
And
before we get into it, I have to shout out our friends at Idealist. If you're listening to this podcast, you already get it. Service matters, community matters, doing good matters. And Idealist is where over 40 million people have gone to turn that feeling into something real. Jobs, volunteer opportunities, ways to give back, right where you are. Don't wait. Go check out the link in the show notes right now. Explore the possibilities. And then, of course, come back for this incredible service story. Let's go. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another AmeriCorps Connections podcast, where we lift up the stories of alumni who were moved by service and really never stopped moving. They just keep getting things done. Today, I'm here with Michaela Barnett, who is a scientist, small business owner, an AmeriCorps VISTA alum. Is that right? VISTA?
That's right. AmeriCorps VISTA.
All right. Awesome. And congressional candidate running in Tennessee's 2nd district.
You got it.
This is wild. I didn't know this podcast was going to turn into a political podcast. It's not. We're not. We're talking about national service stories. But Michaela served in CAC, which stands for Community Action Committee, AmeriCorps in Knoxville back in 2017, 2018. And that year really set in motion. She went on to earn her PhD and launched KnoxFill, a sustainability-focused refillery, which we're all going to learn about refilleries today, and we're all going to get super obsessed and very excited about the sustainability of that. And you also became a real community, which the refillery became a real staple in East Tennessee, is what the Googles told me.
That's true. That's true.
But then you spent a year working inside the House of Representatives as a science policy fellow, and now you're running for Congress. And I'm excited to have you on this podcast to reflect on your AmeriCorps journey and really to talk about how it brought you to this, where you are now. So take us back to your AmeriCorps year. What were you doing, and what's one moment from your service that just still kind of sticks with you?
So before I did AmeriCorps, I had moved to Knoxville a few years earlier, and I think saw so many areas of opportunity in the city, but didn't really know how to immediately plug my expertise and excitement into that. I remember thinking, oh, we need to improve recycling and we need to have it at more of the apartment complexes. We need to do all of these different things. I had so many different ideas, but I think what AmeriCorps did was really help connect me into a pathway to use that skill and expertise and excitement in really positive ways. I think you said in a previous conversation that you were just applying for a job when you did AmeriCorps, right? So the same thing happened to me, actually. I was just on a job.
I'm so glad I'm not alone.
No. And I saw this posting for something related to a community garden, and that posting was already filled, but that led me to AmeriCorps. And I was kind of late to the application cycle for my service year. And I think there were 2 or 3 postings left. And I went and talked to the recycling manager of the University of Tennessee, Jay Price, who would be the supervisor for my position. And it was just a kindred spirit immediately, right? We immediately started nerding out about waste and trash and sustainability and all of these different things. And I got so excited to start that year and really use my degree and really feel connected into the community. What was really special about my year was that I was the first AmeriCorps VISTA at UT Recycling and at UT Sustainability. And they gave me an incredible amount of freedom to solve problems. So essentially, they brought me on. We want you to expand food recovery and food donations on campus. UT is a massive campus, right? With so many eateries and an amazing athletics program. And then they said, there's been different garden efforts throughout the years, student garden efforts. None have really ever gotten off the ground. If you could start maybe a community garden that's also a laboratory for students, an experiential laboratory, great. And then Jay and I were talking about all of the waste that happens on campus. I mean, they have a robust program for move out. Have you ever seen move out on a college campus?
I have 4 kids, young adults. And so the move in, move out. Yeah. It's wild.
Where you
just throw things out the window.
Just throw out things that have been used for a year. It is insane from a waste and sustainability perspective, from a frugality. I don't understand, but you can just do that. But they had a really good system with donations, but still so much got thrown away. And throughout the year, we talked about what if we had a free store. And so in my time at UT, I was basically told, hey, here's 3 problems that you can run down. Let me know if you need help. And I had a year and I was able to do all 3 of those in that year. And I think that really helped me gain the skills that I would use later, getting my PhD, starting a small business, now running for Congress, which was, here's a problem, try and solve it and get help from the people around you to solve it. And the other thing was that, well, really quick example of the garden, the reason it hadn't worked in the past and why all of facility services said, we're never going to do anything like this again.
Yeah.
Students are there for 4 years maximum. Maybe you get a sophomore that's interested in the garden, they do something with it part of that year, whatever, then they leave.
Yep.
And you don't have that continuity and it falls into disrepair. And so all of the facilities management folks were like, this is a non-starter for us. But what that meant was that I actually just got to sit down and talk to all of them about the reasons these projects had failed in the past and what a successful project could look like in the future, and kind of co-design it with them. And by the end of my service year, I got $100,000 for UT's what's now the Grow Lab and all of the facilities folks on board. So that was a really special learning experience, to not just say, well, we're going to do this even though you think it's a bad idea, but to say,
Yeah.
what things failed previously, let's co-design this together and make something that's going to outlast, 1 4-year college cycle.
There's so many things in what you just said that parallel my service year. Cause I was doing service in a park, a regional park, and operations were just like, no, we don't want volunteers in here. Like, no, they come in here, they make a garden, they plant a bunch of stuff in like April, and then it's all dead by June or July, and no more gardens, no more things. No. And this is probably one of the strengths for you running for Congress is like, okay, so we're seeing things completely differently. And I have a solution of these people that want to like support the park, and you don't want them anywhere near your park. So let's figure out how, like, I always like to lead with what would be, how could you, what would be the most successful event or project? What would that look like? And I'll just go off on one personal tangent real fast. When I was serving, Six Flags wanted a day of service for their employees. So these are engineers, woodworkers, folks that like know how to pull up a deck and then put it back together in like an hour, right? And the operations guy was like, absolutely not. Like, we're not having them come into our, right? And because we were talking about rebuilding a dock and like painting a pavilion and like fixing chains on a park, on a, what are they called? Swing sets?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And they were like, no. And they came in, and it was it's so funny, Michaela. I was on my bike, and the park is like, I don't know, 3 to 6 miles if you go around the perimeter. And I rode that bike the entire day, checking on the volunteers. Are we good? Are we good? Are we good? Ultimately, the operations person at the end of the year was like, can we give Six Flags the best volunteers ever of the year award? Can we recognize them? And we are like, yeah, of course. So I love that you started with that, because I think it's such a representation of what you can do in an AmeriCorps year, where you come into this problem and you're just this person in between, and you're like, I think I have a solution. I don't have all the baggage of being in this organization. So yeah, so I love that.
Yeah.
I
And
don't
they've
know.
got some
Go from there.
energy and optimism, and
Yes.
and can be someone that can help us break free of what we know into something that we've imagined and make that reality.
I love that. What else sticks out for you with your AmeriCorps year? What sparked you said that you didn't intentionally apply for the AmeriCorps service, but when did you realize, oh, wow, I'm part of something other than just this part-time sort of thing that I'm doing?
So in Knoxville's one of those, I mean, we're a small city that really feels like it.
Mm-hmm.
And you cannot throw a stone without hitting an AmeriCorps alum doing really cool things. Any neat thing that's happening in Knoxville, they're an AmeriCorps member that is part of it, either because they left their service year and they got hired on by either the nonprofit organization they were working for, or wherever their site placement was, or because they started something new after, or it is that I think is what's really special about AmeriCorps in East Tennessee, is that so many people here have this service background because of it. And what makes it so special is that really anytime any fun new thing happens in the city, if you start like peeling away, it's the 6 layers of Kevin Bacon, but here it's probably like 2 layers of AmeriCorps that someone is involved in it. And that's a really special network and legacy for what the power of service has done in my community, and the way it's equipped a lot of people who aren't from here, who come here to do an AmeriCorps year. They fall in love with Knoxville and East Tennessee, and they start seeing problems as something that's solvable, and they want to be part of it. And I think that's what a service year does for a lot of people, is it makes problem solvers, and that is something that's really cool to be part of.
Yeah. I'm gonna go a little left.
Yeah.
So I was just listening to an astrologer who was talking about the comet of Chiron, which It's the wounded healer. I can go into it, whatever. It's half man, half horse, blah, 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 all this stuff is going into Taurus. And the last time it was in Taurus was when Roosevelt started all of the civilian services.
Mm,
And I just thought, oh my
wow.
gosh, is this like a reignition of like national service and all of these things that help build leaders? But anyways, that's a whole thing that
We
now I
need
have to go down
we
that
need to
rabbit hole.
expand national service is a big belief of mine. And I think it's a really good thing for young people, especially as we have so much AI jobs displacement, as we have so much uncertainty. I think it's a great way for young people to get really connected to their community and learn new skills.
Yeah.
And again, we are facing a lot of really big problems as a society and as a country, and we need problem solvers. I'm not going to say more than ever because every era has needed its problem solvers,
Right.
and we need we need this generation's problem solvers to be stepping up.
And I think to that point, and now I'm going off script, we need folks to know these opportunities are available,
Yes.
right? And viable, and it's not a gap year, and it's not going to college, but it's also just exploring what you might want to do and making connections.
When I was in my undergrad, I knew that Peace Corps was an option.
Right.
But I don't think I knew that AmeriCorps was an option. I think I knew maybe a few people that did Teach for America, but it definitely wasn't presented to me as a post-school pathway that I
Right.
knew about. And it's so funny when I'm talking to young people, especially young people that want to work in sustainability or in nonprofits or in really the kind of work where you're trying to solve big problems for your community, I'm always like, have you looked at AmeriCorps? Because,
Yeah.
everyone's experience can be different and a lot of it depends on your placement and all of these different variables, as with everything in
What if
life.
microwave popcorn didn't have to be full of chemicals, plastics, and mystery ingredients? Conventional microwave popcorn bags are lined with toxic chemicals, artificial flavors, and trans fats. You deserve better. Meet Pops Up Popcorn, a family-made, chemical-free microwave popper from Somersworth, New Hampshire. Just pop in non-GMO kernels, pop it in the microwave, and watch it pop up. No plastic, no silicone, no junk. One box pops 120 cups of delicious air-popped popcorn. Then season it your way. Vermont maple, buttermilk ranch, sweet sriracha, and more. All made with real ingredients. Get your popcorn and seasoning today by heading over to PopsUp, that's POPZUP.com, and at checkout, enter code Nikki10 for 10% off your order. That's Nikki10, NICKI10 for 10% off your order. Snack clean, snack smart, Pops Up Popcorn, the better way to pop. So you did say we found an article, and you said that you wanted more tools in your tool belt after your AmeriCorps year, which eventually led you towards the science and entrepreneurship and policy. Can you walk through that arc? How just basically the one year, the crescendo of all the years, set off everything that came next?
So, that would probably reference that so my undergraduate degree is in sustainability science, and then I also majored in Spanish language and literature. But when it came to solving problems at UT and UT recycling, I think that something I'm trained in and then became more specialized in even through my PhD was thinking really in systems, and you think in
Mm,
positive and negative feedback loops, but it's really important to be able to contextualize problems within the systems they are occurring. And the gap for me was I know a lot of the things that need to change for us to have a more sustainable planet and society, but so much of that hinges on human behavior and decision making. And even though I'm a person that behaves and makes decisions, I don't know that I have great insight into what drives that. And so when I left
Oh, yeah.
T for grad school, when I finished my service year, I really wanted to study behavioral science because I wanted to understand how and why people make the decisions they do and how that drives human behavior. So even though my PhD is in civil engineering, the program that I went to really sat at the intersection of behavioral science, engineering, and design. And I think we could spend a lot of time talking about the PhD, and with other folks that want to go into a PhD, we always have that long conversation because it can be wonderful, it can be not wonderful, as a
Yeah.
lot of other things in life. But I think that really honing my problem solving skills through AmeriCorps and realizing, okay, I want to better understand what is making all of us tick in these complex, interconnected web of systems is what led me to my PhD. And then in my PhD, it was a next level of awareness, which was that I wanted to use science to solve society's biggest problems. And I realized pretty quickly that I didn't want to be in academia because the theory of change, which is not for all academics, right? But I just remember being like, all right, so we're going to spend all of this time researching this problem. And then what? Right? And the then what is, of course,
Yeah.
you spend a few years researching, you spend, months to years writing, you submit it to a journal, you go through the revision process, you finally get your work published, and then it's published. And then the best you could hope for is that the popular media would pick it up and write about it. And then
Mm.
that happening might then get it to someone who can use it, right?
Oh,
And I
interesting.
remember thinking, wait, I think I want to be the person that uses my science.
Right,
No,
right.
I don't want to just study the problem. I then want to take all of those insights and I want to apply it.
Yeah.
Which of course a lot of people also do applied research and applied science. And it was that process that led me to start my business, which, a lot of my doctoral work was focused on problems with our waste and recycling system. We'll notice a trash theme throughout
Yeah.
life, right? I did recycling at UT and in college. I, started a composting program. In high school, I started recycling programs. It's been a lifelong thing. But that's what made me start my business was studying problems with our waste and recycling system as a PhD student. So I started my company KnoxFill while I was still doing my PhD. Up until running for Congress, I thought starting a business while getting your doctorate would be the hardest thing I'd done, but pales in comparison.
Wow.
Knoxville is now we had our 5-year anniversary a couple months ago. I've got a big team,
Wow.
it's wonderful. But the way that that connects into what came after is, at that point, I had experience creating change as a scientist, as an entrepreneur. And I realized the scale of the problems that we need to solve and that I really care about, all of that happens at the level of policy.
See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. If this conversation is activating something in you, don't just let that feeling sit there. Go check out Idealist. They've connected over 40 million people with opportunities to serve, give back, and do good. Whatever that looks like for you, go explore. And the link will be in the show notes. And now back to the episode.
Earlier at the
Mhm.
beginning, you said this isn't a politics podcast. And I was thinking to myself, it is in the sense that all AmeriCorps exists as a result of policy, right? And
Facts.
policy makers. Anyways, back in
Good
circular.
facts.
Um,
Yes.
and anyway, so I just realized, for me to solve the problems at scale that I care about, I need to understand more about how policymaking works, especially at the scale of our federal government, which is why I went to DC for a science policy fellowship and worked in Congress. And that experience is what made me realize, all right, well, the next level of change I need to make is probably still here. So I think every layer of the onion from AmeriCorps and before was how do we solve society's biggest problems, which sounds so
Mhm.
grandiose. But for me, I'm really thinking about how do we solve problems that affect our neighbors and are hurting people, and how do we
Mhm.
make systems better? And it just is continuing to peel back the layers of how I can have more tools to do that, right? What are the trade-offs, right? And
Yeah.
how does this choice impact this thing over here positively or negatively? And what will
Yeah.
be the cascading ripple effects there? And honestly, a lot of the problems we have right now are because people are not thinking in systems, and they're not
Yeah.
thinking
Long
even
term.
a few months in advance. They are
Yeah.
only thinking about right now. And that
Yeah.
means that, you know, the decisions that a lot of our leaders are making are causing problems that my nieces and nephews and their kids and their grandkids are going to have to solve unless we make a few changes.
I want to go there, and I want to say two things. Number one, though, there's this indigenous belief of 7 generations, like making decisions now that are going to affect 7 generations down. And I truly believe we're in a moment where that way of thinking has stopped so long ago, and that we need to get back into that. What do we need to do now to make sure that our systems are sustainable 7 years, 7 generations down? And the other thing I was thinking about, and I wanted to ask you of how you decided to just throw your hat in. That's so brave, right? I was hired by a governor, and I was in the governor's office, and I was supporting campaigns, and I've seen behind the curtain, and it's behind
Brutal.
the curtain. Want to say that. So when you decided that the systems were the problem and the policies were impacting the systems, where did that feeling inside of you? How are you so brave?
I'll just say that I really believe that I'm on this planet to serve. And there's a lot of sacrifices that I have made and will continue to make, and there are high personal costs. But I honestly, I feel a very deep sense of calling to serve my community, and I really can't imagine spending my time any other way right now. If I weren't running, I would be engaged in service in some other way. My husband would probably tell the anecdote of when I told him I wanted to start my business, you know, over 5 years ago. He was like, "Yeah, great, sounds good." And then 2 days later, a semi truck pulled up to the back of our house.
Um,
Started, yeah,
I'm
I'm like, I
to
like,
circle back with you
yeah.
because I've got a bunch of businesses I want to start, and I'm just like,
So I am just very much like executive decision maker. That doesn't mean I don't, analyze it all these different ways, but he was so funny. He was like, I think that, when you finish the PhD or in the future, but oh wow, you're starting this. I was like, yeah, I told you. I told you I was gonna start a business. We talked about this. And he said,
oh my gosh.
now, 5 years later, we're gonna celebrate our 7 year anniversary in like a week and a half. And at this point, our wedding anniversary, at this point, he would not be surprised at all. He's like, yes. And same thing with running for office, where my district has been red since the Civil War or since Reconstruction, essentially.
Whoa.
And I was coming home almost every weekend from DC. My husband was still working here, and our home. This is home, and I, I told him I I'm thinking about running. He said, okay, all right. And then I talked to a few friends and said, I know there's a lot of hubris. There's a lot of people that run for office and start with Congress. And I don't think that should be the pathway for most people. Most people that want to run for office, I really do encourage. I think starting at the city council, the county commission, the school board, I think that is the appropriate pathway. And so I recognize there is so much hubris as a first-time candidate saying, I'm going to run for the U.S. House of Representatives
Yeah.
because I was working there. And it's because I was
Yeah.
every day and seeing the level of failure, honestly, from our leaders. And I remember talking to one of my friends that's involved with with the local party. And he said, Michaela, if you decide to run, I'll campaign for you like I've never campaigned for anyone in my life.
Whoa.
And then he was like, I'm going to set you up to talk with some of our local party leaders. And I thought, okay, that'll probably be me pitching myself, right? I'm a small business owner. I've done plenty of pitch competitions. I've done plenty of job interviews.
Yeah.
And what happened instead at that Zoom call that I took um, was several different people that said, we're not going to pressure you, but if you wanted to do this, we're 100% behind you. And we really think you should do this. And I think they saw what it took me a little bit longer to see, which is that I think I'm the candidate to be able to flip this seat in this moment because of my experience in DC, because of all of these other things, because of a lot of the science communication work I've done, but because of my deep ties in my community. And that really changed when that happened. I said, "Oh, Max, like I didn't have to convince anyone that I should do this. Everyone said, please, will you do this?" And that really made me say, all right, what would this look like? And I got back from my fellowship last August, and I started my campaign last September.
That's wild. Sometimes when people put their trust in you, as far as I believe you can do this, I don't know if this is similar for you, but for me, it's a driver where I'm like, well, if they think I can do it, then I need to figure out how to do this. And then suddenly you become the thing, right? One of the things I want to do is I want to connect your business to your community ties. So can you talk a little bit about Knoxville?
Phil, people always
So many times.
know.
And I was like, and when you said it, I'm like, oh, I get it now.
Right. It's so funny because for a long time, people would introduce me as, this is Michaela. She runs KnoxFill. And sometimes people would hear Knoxville, and they'd go, "I'm
Yeah.
mayor." I'm like, no, no, no. So KnoxFill, I mean, it's something that I think so many people in our community were really hungry for.
Yeah.
It's a place that you can fill anything from, we've got hundreds of bulk refillable products from laundry detergent to shampoo, sunscreen, teas, spices, face wash, deodorant, kind of you name it. And we've got a zero or low waste version of it. And the really neat thing is when I started this, I mean, eliminating or reducing plastic pollution is just one small part of what it means to try and make things a little bit more sustainable. And so, when you look at the three pillars of sustainability, it is economic, social, and environmental. And for me, it was really important that this business was really also giving back economically to my community. And so at any given point, we have like 50 Tennessee-based businesses on our shelves. We source local
Oh, gotcha.
from Knoxville and Knox County and Blount and East Tennessee whenever we can, or regionally, like our refillable deodorant comes from Lebanon, Tennessee, 2.5 hours away. We've got an amazing local soap maker that supplies our soap bars, and that has been really, really cool to know that, especially even when markets are low or all of these other Etsy sales are down, for some of these makers, the check that they get from Knoxville is the biggest check their business gets every month. Right.
Wow.
And then
Wow.
yes, and I have an amazing team. My team ran things last year while I was in Congress. They're running things this year while I'm running for Congress. Um, and so we also, I know what it's like to make payroll and be checking your bank account and wondering. But my business has changed a lot over the years. So when I started basically as a milkman delivery style service. So I would always tell folks, instead of, the 1950s, it's modern day. Instead of milk, it's personal care and household goods. And instead of a man, it's a woman. And I would deliver pre-filled containers to people's homes and pick up their empties and bring them home and sanitize and refill and then do it all. It was so incredibly labor intensive. I had one employee at the time, and I was doing my PhD. And then we started doing markets in addition to delivery, where we would bring like 1 gallon jugs that people could fill up out of. And then we got a mobile refillery, and then we got our first brick and mortar. And then we moved to a much larger location where we now have a classroom, and we have a creative reuse section, which is like a thrift store for craft supplies. I'm working with my team. I want us to have a tool library there as well and recurring fix-it fairs. And we're actually in the process of transitioning to a non-for-profit, either at the end of this year or early next year. Also because I don't want any conflicts of interest as I
Yeah.
do public office.
Yeah.
And because this really is something that's for and by the community. So there's a phenomenal team of women running the shop, and it is so it's really special. And we've got thousands of households and businesses that refill with us. I'd have to check. I think last time I looked, we had 8,000 households that use KnoxFill. And that's really, really exciting and really special.
There's so I want to visit. I want to visit.
Why?
To see it.
Come anytime.
I had a podcast up in New York, and they're like, visit. And then now I'm going to go to Tennessee. I need to get a little podcast van. That makes so much sense, and like pouring into the community. It just seems like a natural fit. And I don't know about you, but listening to how you came about your service year and all of the opportunities that you got to do during that time, and then now thinking through and building this business and employing local folks, right? Like, this is all like,
Yeah.
you're the real deal.
It's really fun because I meet young people sometimes, and they know that I'm running for Congress, and they know about Knoxville, but they don't know that I'm the one that started it and that I own it, and that I'm still, doing bookkeeping every once in a while on the weekends, right? And then they'll say, "Oh my gosh, you're in Knoxville?" And then every once in a while, one of them will realize we'll be talking about UT, and they'll say something, and I'll go, "Yeah, and I started the free store there," and their brains will just explode in the best way. And I am very clear, like, I started it, but the people that came after me, they grew it, they built it into what it is today, and they maintained it and really just took that small first concept and made it something really sustainable over the long term. But it feels really special to have all of these little markers of change in our community and service through my time that I have been working and engaged here. And I'm really just excited to continue to see what we're able to build. And I think about that in terms of infrastructure with my campaign. So a lot of congressional campaigns, the first thing they'll do is they'll hire a consultant. And the consultant is usually in DC or New York or Chicago or like one of the big cities. Because there's a lot of political knowledge there. But what that means is that you're sending people's hard-earned donations outside of your community.
Oh, wow.
And you're not building capacity locally, and you're not building skills. And so as of this point, I have 10 people paid on my campaign, which is crazy. We have 800 folks signed up to volunteer with the campaign. We are really creating a politics of joy and community and service. And I don't think it's something that folks have really seen here before. At least I haven't. And it's really exciting to be building this with my team and with the community, to be longstanding civic engagement infrastructure for the future.
That's so exciting. I'm going to ask you 2 more questions as we kind of close out. I'm going to ask you something about your service year, and then I'm going to ask you about what happens if you win. Or should we say when you win? I don't know.
I say win. It's important
Okay.
for me that and it's a shift I made a couple months ago. My team was like, "You have to start saying win, Michaela."
Yeah.
And I'm very much, I'm a scientist. I'm like looking at the data. I'm like, whatever. And
Yeah.
there's a path to victory here, 100%. And so I've started saying win.
Yeah. And I'm a big believer in talking in terms of what you want, not necessarily what is, right?
Yeah.
Like, I am somebody that runs 2 miles every day,
Mm.
and then I will.
Maybe. Identity. That's a good, hey, that's a good behavioral science practice there.
Well,
Yeah, getting to observe.
if there's anything from your service year specifically that's still popping up, and it sounds like you've already touched on this a little bit, like day to day or now, or whether it's a skill or a habit. And I know we don't think it's not like we go through the day and we're like, oh, that reminds me of my AmeriCorps year. But is there anything that does ground you into your AmeriCorps year? And then on that, I want to add, if somebody's going through their AmeriCorps year or thinking about doing AmeriCorps, what's the message that you want them to hear from where you were to where you are now?
So actually,
Sorry,
that's
didn't prep you for that.
a good question. Oh, you're good. The question, the grounding, the three people that took my role after me, at UT Recycling as an AmeriCorps VISTA. One of them I ended up hiring for Knoxville, and now that person works part-time with me on my campaign.
Oh,
Another one helped me with Knoxville deliveries in the county, the neighboring county that she works at a nonprofit. She would take our customer deliveries once a week there. The other person, we touched base recently. And I think the really cool thing is if someone's in AmeriCorps, it's kind of a proxy for this is good, hardworking people. Easy people. And that's really special. I'm actually gonna go see one of them tonight. We're gonna do part work, part pleasure, and do some campaign stuff and also catch up, which will be great. And the advice that I would give to young people that are going through AmeriCorps is that they're already doing the work. They're already, there's this theologian from, I don't remember exactly when, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And he talks about vocation as the place where your deep gladness meets the world's deep need. And that's where you can think about your place in this world. And I think just keep looking for the world's deep need and the problems that you can't stop thinking about as you fall asleep at night, and which ones really light you up, and work on those, and trust that there's other wonderful people in this beautiful planet of ours being lit up by other problems, working on those, because we can't all do it all, but together we can maybe do it all.
that was beautiful. I almost want to stop the podcast right there. That was so good. But I do want to say, when you win, what's one thing that you want from your service year that you'd carry with you into the office, and something that shapes how you'd actually show up for your district? And it sounds like,
I'm gonna fight to expand and fund national service programs. That's what I'm going to do, because they have been so critical for East Tennessee, and they are such an important program that, even my opponent likes. And he lamented privately when AmeriCorps was cut and did nothing about it publicly. And that was another thing for me where I'm like, we don't just get to be upset about things. We have to do things even when there is a personal and political cost. And for me, what I'm going to carry is the importance of this program and how we're going to fund it, because I think money that goes into AmeriCorps yields huge benefits for the communities that it's invested in. That is the thing that I will carry from my AmeriCorps year, is the value that these programs have on their communities, and that this is not something that we need to be cutting. Sure, if we need to do an audit, we can do an audit, but this is something that we need to invest in. We need to expand, because the money that we are putting into AmeriCorps, it has multiplying benefits in the communities that folks are in, not just in service members' lives, but in every organization they're placed in, and in the communities they serve. So I'm excited to use my experience as an AmeriCorps alum to fight for the value of our national service programs. People need an outlet. What I have experienced through AmeriCorps, my business, my time as a science policy fellow, now through my congressional campaign, is that people want to step up and do good in their communities, and sometimes they just need the channel through which to do it. And service years provide that channel.
Love that. Okay. We're finishing up. What are the last words? What are the last things that you want folks to know about you, your service year, your campaign, anything? Do you need support? What do you need?
Always,
We
I
are
always
just
need support.
by Nikki. So
I
all
always
of you.
I always need support. So my website is mb4tn.com. And really, we need to get the word out about this campaign. Like I said, we've got, over 800 volunteers. We're creating a really exciting movement here in East Tennessee. And to flip this seat and run a campaign that can do it, we're going to need to quintuple the size of our movement over the next 4.5 months. And so whether folks can share about the movement that we're building, whether they can volunteer if they're in East Tennessee or remotely, or whether they can donate, those are really big ways to help. There's two kind of slogans I use on the campaign that I think folks with service backgrounds would really resonate with. One of them is put hope to work, which is we can hope, but man, we've got to work for it. And the other one is that we are the cavalry, right? No one can save us except us. And so, any ways that people can elevate the work that we're doing is absolutely wonderful. And also, I'm sure there's a lot of local candidates in each of your backyards that could use some help too.
That is so great. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. And folks, we'll be back with another AmeriCorps alums on the AmeriCorps Connections podcast, learning about what folks are up to, highlighting their service story, and then also just supporting their future. So we'll make sure we have all those links in the show notes, and excited to see when is voting campaign, all that happening.
I'm uncontested in my primary. So my primary and our local elections are August 6th, but the big one is November 3rd, midterms.
Gosh.
We're going to try and get a lot of good down ballot participation August 6th.
When you get into DC for your first day, I swear I'm going to come meet you at your office. I'm going to give you a big hug.
Come to the inauguration.
That's so cool. All right. Thank you, Michaela. And thank you all and if you made it this far, you may as well subscribe, because that will just add to your algorithms to have good stuff in your feed. So thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you, Michaela.
Thanks, Nikki. Have a good rest of your evening.
So, all right. Thank you so much for joining the AmeriCorps Connections podcast. If you haven't done it already, please hit subscribe. It really makes a difference in the podcast algorithms. So if you like this content and you want it to continue, I just need you to hit subscribe and share it.